So today we are going to take a closer look at some of the plant materials that you as a player interact with in the video game Breath of the Wild. So even though this is a fantasy world, a lot of the plants that we see do belong or could belong to plant families that exist in real life, and in some cases, and especially in these cases, are really horticulturally important plant families. You interact with plants from these families on a daily basis, whether you are eating them as a meal, or they are going into the flavorings of your foods, or you are using them therapeutically or medicinally as teas or as essential oils. You are interacting with these plants all the time, plants from these families anyway, all the time. So we can use the artistic interpretations of these plants as a lens to learn about the world around us. But we can also study the way that these plants are interpreted artistically. The interpretation of the scientific information, and that can inform your own creative process. So here are the plant families that we're going to go over today. And I'll just say right now, this is your chance to pause. This is your cheat sheet. Pause the video, take a picture, so that you can refer back to this key, so that when I am talking about different plants and showing you different plants throughout the video, you can refer back to this and get oriented if you're not sure which family I'm talking about. These names are if you don't know them off the top of your head, hopefully you will by the end of the video, but if you don't know them, then you can just pause and be like, what did she mean when she said Limiaceae? Oh, right, it's the mint family, and these are the related plants that are in there. So I wanted to give you a couple pictures of really typical appearances of some of the plant parts in this cheat sheet, as well as the main crops that we're going to go over from Breath of the Wild, so that you can orient yourself. And instead of talking about some of the more technical, like morphological aspects of some of these plants, and using really high-level botanical terms that you or I might not even know, I want you to focus on what you can absorb just by looking at lots of examples of these different plants and what you see in common among or within the different families. And that's going to give you a good idea of what can be toyed with in your own creative process when you want to interpret the plants. So with that, if you haven't taken your picture yet, then pause and do so, because here we go. All right, so take a little walk around the garden here and look at some members of Brassicaceae family, and this one is a radish, so that's Raphanus sativus. And if you look at the inflorescence, which, usually you harvest radishes right before they start to flower, but if you look at it, it does kind of look like broccoli a little bit. And you can see that these are daikon radishes. They're starting to make the really thick root that we harvest and eat. If we move on, you can see another radish. The leaves are a little different on this guy, but these two are starting to make that root. And if we move over to this bed, this is Chinese cabbage, so Brassica napa. And it's been in here too long, and it's starting to get hot, which means it's bolting. So again, we don't usually let these plants flower, but these ones are, so you get a chance to see these pretty distinct flowers. They have 4 petals, and underneath the petals you can see the 4 sepals that look all spiky. They're really thin and narrow, and again looks a little bit like a head of broccoli. And now I want to show you a cover crop that I had in for this past winter. So this is yellow mustard. This is Guienia flavescens. And you know, the plant itself looks pretty different, but the flowers again are pretty distinct. This is another Brassica family member, and you can see these 4 petals and these 4 spiky sepals behind the petals, underneath the petals. See that right in the center there between those 2? That's the sepal. And again, kind of looks like it could turn into a head of broccoli there. So those are some cultivated brassicas. This is a wild member of Lamiaceae growing just a few feet away. So there's the holy basil over there next to the tomatoes. And this is called Florida betony, Stachys floridana. I don't know why these are like too small for this camera to deal with, but here we go. So now you got a better look at these 3 fused petals that are on the bottom and the 2 fused ones that are up top. And again, the opposite branching. And the petals, they look like, or the flowers, the inflorescence looks like it's arranged in a whorl. See that? But apparently it's really just clusters, like a few clusters of flowers. So you can kind of see the resemblance. I'll take you over to another member of this family that I'm growing ornamentally, and also because like pollinators like it. This is red sage, or scarlet sage, and you can kind of see, like if you hold these up next to each other, you can see the similarity in the arrangement and the morphology, the leaves and everything. And this is, sorry about that, this is starting to put out an inflorescence, and you can see that it's going to have the same kind of apparently whorled arrangement. There's a couple more members of Lamiaceae, the mint family. These are culinary horticultural members. This is rosemary. I think it's Rosmarinus officinalis, and you can see it has that same sort of opposite pattern where the leaves come out from the same spot on the stem. And then here we have thyme, which I took a few cuttings of and trying to root in a shot glass, and successfully, I might add. It's only taken a couple months, but this one is flowering, and you can see those super tiny little flowers that have the 3 fused petals underneath and then the 2 fused petals on top. And yeah, a lot of these are used for spices, because you've got your rosemary, your thyme, your sage, you know, mint, catnip. These are all in that family. And you can see the resemblance here, the 2 opposite coming out, and then opposite, and then opposite leaves branching off at the same point of the stem. So here behind the building, you can see, definitely know this is a member of Asteraceae, because it just looks like a sunflower, little baby sunflower. So these are the flowers inside. These are called the disc florets because they're on the disc. And then these are the ones that I'm crushing, the yellow ones sticking out, are called the ray florets. And so they probably serve to like attract attention from pollinators, whereas these are actually the little tiny flowers that get pollinated and make the seeds. There's an Asteraceae. So now we're at the teaching garden across from Fifield, over there. And we have some members of the Apiaceae family here. These guys are carrots, and you can see the resemblance, right? The very deeply lobed leaves, very feathery in appearance. I'm not going to pull these up because I don't know who's growing them, but if you kind of reveal down here around the shoulder of the plant, you can see it's going to be a purple carrot. It's a pretty thick root getting ready to be harvested. So very cool. So I'm not going to harvest anything here because it tells me not to. There's an experiment going on. But if we just go up and look at them, we can see, again, kind of the thick flower, or the thick leaf. Lots of bees. Oh, bees are all over this. And you can see the yellow color and the way the flowers have been held in the special architecture away from the stem. And the four flowers is another member of the Brassica family. I don't know what it is. It could be broccoli that they let go to seed, and they're doing some kind of breeding of this broccoli. I'm not sure, but it's pretty cool to watch the bees on it. They really like it. Pretty nice. And here we have a really nice example of an umbel inflorescence on some kind of umbellifer. I'm just gonna... This is another dill, and you can see the arrangement of this floral head and all of these little flowers coming off here. And so this is where this family gets their name, because carrots and parsley and cilantro and dill and all the others, they all make this distinct umbel inflorescence. Really, really nice example of it. This was a huge one that is done now, but you can see the size of the stalk. I mean, they get really big. So that's cool. And this is how you would collect seeds for cilantro, or from cilantro, which would make coriander. So that's the same plant. Really nice. Some more dill. It's really nice to touch. Very soft, and pollinators love this. There is a specific kind of butterfly, Anis swallowtail. Anis is a member of this family, and they really like to be on these plants. And you can see another member in here, actually, of Apiaceae, the umbellifers. So these are both Apiaceae. And this is a cilantro plant, or coriander. So, again, very aromatic, just like the dill. And these two are growing together, probably to attract pollinators at the head of this row. So here amongst the brassicas, we have what is probably a weed, an aster, a member of the Asteraceae family. It looks like a thistle to me. I don't know what that black stuff is in there, but it is kind of creepy looking. So this is kind of neat. Spines coming off of the leaves for the thistles, or whatever this is. But pretty gnarly looking plant, and I don't want to mess with it because I don't think it's part of anyone's experiment, but you never know. So yeah, if I break it, can you see that white latex coming out? and that is something that you see with this family in certain like subfamilies and tribes. And one more member of Asteraceae here, lettuce. This is, I'm gonna guess Lactuca sativa, and this will do the same thing if I break, well, it's probably been bred out of these, but if I break some of these leaves off, it's possible, if it's been hot enough variety, that you'd see that same latex coming out of the leaves where it was broken. Another Asteraceae that hasn't bloomed yet. Either a sunflower or a marigold, something like that. But you can see the head where those tiny flowers are going to be, and the ray petals are going to come out from there. So yeah, there's a lot of these 4 families represented here in this agricultural landscape. So our first plant family example is in Brassicaceae, and that is the radish, the hardy radish. There's also a big hardy radish that you can find in the game, and it has the hardy, quote unquote, hardy effect, so it gives you back like extra health. And the big flag for this plant, the way you find this plant, is by seeing the flowers above ground, because they really stand out with their pink color from the rest of the really green vegetation. But if you take a closer look at this plant, you do notice that it has some of the characteristics that we've seen in the other Brassicaceae plants. And obviously it's the flower that has those 4 petals, which is a detail that they've managed to keep in their game version of this plant. So a lot of angiosperms or flowering plants do have 5 petals, and Brassicaceae is kind of different in that it only has 4. And so here's the descriptions of the plants. And less concerned with where these plants are being found. Obviously they they want you to be able to find them all around the map, but you can see how much that pink flower stands out from the rest of the vegetation. And if you compare that flower to a wild radish, it's very similar. I mean, they took their inspiration right from the real world with the way this radish is colored. Most of the other Brassicaceae flowers that we've seen so far have been yellow, but radish flowers can be white or pink or like a deeper purple. And so that's been maintained in the design of this plant. I think the special architecture of the flowers and fruits, the way they're held away from the stem of the plant, has also been maintained here. And the leaves are, I don't know, slightly questionable. They're not lobed. They're pretty, they have an entire margin or a smooth margin. But I think that is something you can overlook in considering the accuracy of the flowers on the inflorescence. And so here, continuing to talk about leaves, we are at the fairy fountain. And this is a place where we can find one of the 2 types of carrot that are in the game. Now with the carrots, we don't have that really distinct umbel inflorescence that, that these plants derive their name from. And carrots are a lot more rare and they're a lot harder to find in this game, so that kind of works. There's not a lot calling attention to them. But I do want to draw your attention to the leaves because they aren't that really lacy, feathery type of leaf that you see on carrots that, grow in real life. But I think they do resemble a parsley or cilantro leaf, and that is a related plant. I don't know if the lacy, feathery leaf would have been too difficult to design and render in the game. And if that's the case, then they decided to go with something that just is related. I don't know if they put that much thought into it, but if they did a good job. Here are some of the other carrots. So there's two types. There's the one with like the two legs because it's like running, I guess. And then here's the swift carrot. And it has the same leaf, so it's the same design. The colors of the two different roots are slightly different, but the leaves are designed the same way. And if you look at a parsley leaf or a celery leaf, which are both related to this plant, I think you'll see the resemblance there. So, moving on from carrots, we'll take a look at the saphlinas. And I think this is the plant that requires, in some ways, the most interpretation because the name doesn't quite give it away, right? Like, it's easy to know what family a radish or a carrot is from, but what is this saphlina? And I don't know what it's called in Japanese, which might give more clues, but I think by looking at it, you can tell from the appearance that it is meant to be a member of the Lamiaceae family. It has that spike inflorescence, so all the flowers coming off of it are like on this spike, which you see with sages and mints and basils. The flowers are not matching up to what we would see from a Lamiaceae flower, right? It doesn't have the three fused petals on the bottom and then the two fused petals on top, or I think that can be flipped, so you have three on the top and two on the bottom with that like tongue hanging down. But in any case, this is 4 petals, and it's very symmetrical. Like, I think you could argue for perhaps some radial symmetry here. But because the form of the flowers is very distinct, I think that we can put this in with the at least Lamiaceae inspired plants. And then here's our final plant that we're going to look for, and this is Hyrule herb. And I believe that this is meant to be a pineapple weed. So pineapple weed is a relative of chamomile. The genus is Matricaria, and that is in the Asteraceae family. So I wanted to go looking for some pineapple weed up here. There are a few other plants that, based on their appearance and their name, could be asters in the Asteraceae family. I got distracted by this radish for a second. Back on track. But this is the only one I think we can definitely say would fall into that Asteraceae category. And if you look at a picture of pineapple weed, I think it becomes pretty clear. So not only is the head of the flower really similar to the real life plant, but also the leaves, which are kind of lacy. And there's just a few more examples of Hyrule herb in different areas, and you can see the leaves a lot better here. Something interesting about Hyrule herb is that, in my experience, it can be found... Oh, here's one of the other potential aster families. So this could be a globe artichoke. It's called Amaranth. But I'm not sure if it is or not. I haven't built enough of a case for it to be artichoke, but I'm not sure what else it could be. And this could be a case where it's just, pure artistic interpretation. They drew from many different sources to create something really unique. And that's why I wanted to include it. But the other thing about Hyrule herb, which I think is this pineapple weed plant, is that you can find it almost anywhere that people are. So it's near all of the towns. See, it's here by the ruins and by the different stables that are like scattered throughout the map. And you could argue that this has what we would call a cosmopolitan distribution. So it grows almost anywhere. Now I'm in this little meadow, really asking to get just messed up by fire ants, but this is not on our list, but I want to show it to you because it's just this wild plant. But check that out. Looks familiar, doesn't it? A lot like a pea. These plants are everywhere. It's a legume, Fabaceae family. I don't know what it is, but it's there. And now we've got this. It's Lamiaceae family. These are called dead nettles. And they can see these two, it's got the opposite branching, or opposite arrangement of leaves anyway, like we talked about, but they do appear to be like fused into this little cup shape. They're not actually fused together, I don't think. But again, the flowers are what gives it away. Let's see if I can get a good look at one of these flowers. It's kind of late in the day. I don't know if they close up at night. Slightly distinct. Yeah, you can see where the three would be fused on the bottom with the two up top. That kind of bilateral symmetry. You got to draw a line vertically through the flower to get symmetry. It's not radial. And arranged in that same apparently whorled pattern, even though it's really actually two clusters. I think there was something else in this field. Take a little walk. Here's our Carophyllums. The more plant matter, I should say shoot matter you get, they've put more energy into the green, and they're going to put less energy into the root, into the below ground part of the plant. But they're here, feathery, looking like carrot tops. Definitely a relative of the Apiaceae carrot family, a member of that one. What else is in this field? Aha! Here we go. There's no way this is going to show up on the camera, but this is called a shepherd's purse. And this is a wild brassica. So these are all fruits. You can see how they sort of resemble that salique, especially in the arrangement of the inflorescence. And it should have 4 petals, which we don't see too much, right, with angiosperms. It's so tiny. You can just kind of see the 4 petals. I wish my camera would behave, but it doesn't want to play nice and like bring these into focus. You can just barely see those 4 petals. So yeah, here's a wild, or at least, introduced, not native, growing wild brassica. And that's just, here's another big clump of them in this little, field out here next to the construction and the parking lot. Here's another member of APAC that we haven't talked about, but this is celery. So this is in the carrot family and cilantro. You can see that resemblance actually in the leaf. Here's some more brassicas. Doesn't like this. So here's some more brassicas. You can see that floral head. Those are actually flowers. And again, that architecture of the flowers being held away from the stem like that. Here they are. Artichokes, I was hoping these would be here. These are in the game, I think. It's a globe artichoke. That's in the aster family, the daisy family, Asteraceae. More carrot family, Apiaceae up here. All the parsleys and cilantros. More broccolis, that's brassicas. These endives are in the aster family, so these two next to each other are related. Along with these, another aster family plant. So here we are, we're all represented here. Another brassica, this Napa cabbage. And we have the fennel, is an umbellifer, Apiaceae family. Related to the dills, the carrots, the parsleys. It's all here. So with the exception of these scallions, which are Amaryllidaceae, the alliums, we went over these in the presentations. All of these plants are in 1, 2, 3 different families. Pretty cool. And over here in the spices is where we see our representatives from Lamiaceae, the mint family. So mint, basil, tarragon, oregano, rosemary, sage, and thyme. These are all related to each other. And then you see some others that are also representatives from other plant families. The cilantro and the dill are also related, as well as the parsley, although they're in the Apiaceae family. So the carrot family, along with that fennel. And here in the spice aisle, you can see something that's distinct, mostly to the Apiaceae or carrot family, is that we use the seeds. So cumin is in this family, the celery seed is in this family, the fennel. I don't know if you can see the resemblance, but the seeds all have this kind of like, these are way too tiny, but there's like a stripy look to them. I don't know if you can see the similarity there. There's no whole coriander that I can find, but there is ground coriander. Again, that's the seed from a cilantro plant. So you'll find a lot of these plants represented over here in the spices as well, especially the Lamiaceae, the mint family, that we use the leaves anyway for spices, and the seeds, it's another Lamiaceae, and the seeds from the Apiaceae that we use for flavorings. And this is kind of interesting. I found this when I was researching this video, but the stevia is also in the Asteraceae family. So it's related to the lettuces and the sunflowers. So we're kind of on our last stop here with the coffees and teas. There's just a few more things I want to point out. The first one is this coffee and chicory. So chicory, in this case, it's the root being used. This is a member of the Asteraceae family. And I guess, you know, when you grind it and roast it, it does have like kind of a coffee-like flavor, so it's used as a coffee substitute sometimes. And then we go down to the teas. We really see a lot of representation from some of our plant families that we're going over, although we have no brassica members. They have those brassica steroids in them, which give them that kind of like sulfury flavor and smell sometimes, so you're not going to find those in teas. But we can find a lot of our other new friends. I just have to point out these zinger teas that have, you can see the hibiscus flower. That's a member of the Malvaceae family. That's the roselle or sorrel that makes the really like tangy tea that was covered. And we also have these members of Zinzerberraceae that are together in a tea. Oh, here they are. And oh, they're both that. So those were covered in the in your all of your presentations. But I want to talk about chamomile. So you can see a picture of the flower. It's a really popular tea, right? I mean, you guys have all heard of chamomile tea. It seems like every package has a picture of the chamomile flower on it. And clearly a member of Asteraceae, right? With that head, that like pad of flowers. But another Asteraceae in a different subfamily or tribe is this dandelion. So that is more closely related, I think, to the chicory side of things. And you can kind of see it in like the cuts of these leaves that remind you of the thorns we saw before on the artichoke, or spines perhaps. And so we've got chamomile mint. So we've got some Lamiaceae family representatives. Lavender is in the mint family, a Lamiaceae plant. And gosh, I know there's more. Here's a fennel, a probiotic. So a mint family and a carrot family or umbellifer plant together in tea. So something that you might have figured out about some of these plants is they have a lot of flavor, and that's why we want to eat them, right? We want to eat their leaves and their roots and their fruits. But these families in particular do have a lot of like really flavorful compounds in them. If you just go out in your yard and like taste leaves, which, you know, some of us do from time to time, there's not a lot of flavor going on. So that's something that we've tried to emphasize in the plants that we're raising horticulturally, and it's reflected in not only eating them directly, but also using them as spices and teas to get those flavors, and in some cases, some of the, you know, some of the like other properties that go with that. Like you're gonna drink chamomile tea because it relaxes you. You're gonna drink lavender tea because it relaxes you, and you might drink mint tea because it makes your stomach feel better. So there's a lot going on with all these plants, and you know, that's why we're still raising them and eating them and drinking them after all these years. So I hope you enjoyed this look at these different plant families that you can find if you look a little bit more closely in both the video game Breath of the Wild and also in, you know, your grocery store or your food or even the field next to your parking lot. I don't want to suggest that these are the only plant families that are horticulturally relevant, even though they're really well represented in, you know, in our food and our cuisines. But they are, because they're kind of the biggest ones with the most examples, they were what I figured I had time to cover. There's actually a lot of plants that I wanted to go over in this video and in this class and in more videos that I don't know if we really have the time to cover. So if you want to explore any of the other ones in the game in more detail, just let me know and we can work something out. But I hope what you're taking away from this video in particular is how to do artistic interpretations of plants while using scientific facts about them as a starting point or an inspiration. I hope that you were able to sort of intuit what makes plants from these different families recognizable. How you can play off of those really recognizable features and also why it's important for your fictional plant to be from that particular family when you're doing, creative interpretation for your own fictional work. So I hope you keep all of those different things in mind, and, obviously talk to me if you have any questions. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and, hope you enjoyed looking at all these different plants, and I hope you see plants a little bit differently the next time you prepare a dish or go shopping or take a walk.